it's impossible to replace a player like Lucas. You have to be aware what he means for us, what he gives us, his talent, fantastic player, so irreplaceable. Bournemouth is a very good team, and Andoni, I admire him, I know him from some while now, and more than anything is what we're going to face at Bournemouth on the Saturday is a tough opponent. We are talking about a very good team and a fantastic work from Andoni. We're going to face a tough opponent.
Hello everybody. Next up, this Saturday we head in a generally southwesterly direction down towards what used to be Hampshire when I was a kid, but what is now Dorset, following one of those boundary changes that they were so fond of in the 1970s, where we'll be hosted by AFC Bournemouth. Kick-off is at the right and proper time of 3 p.m. Now, if you're travelling down by train, you may want to allow a little bit more time than usual for the journey, as there are engineering works in the Woking area which will cause a significant diversion. Imagine, if you will, a right-angled triangle. Well, instead of taking the hypotenuse route, the trains will be following the height and base sides. Slowly. Check before you leave, etc. So, Bournemouth then. They've had a decent start, which has found them breathing the rarefied air of the European places for much of this season. However, 2 defeats on the trot has seen them slip a little bit in the weeks prior to the latest international break. Their last 6 read drawn, 1 lost. Of those, the last 3 saw them beat Forest 2-0 at home before losing 3-1 at Man City. Perhaps slightly more worrying for them was the following week's 4-0 reverse at Villa Park. Though at 2-0 down, they did have a good spell of pressure which culminated in them getting a penalty. However, Villa's Martinez guessed correctly to deny Semenyo from the spot, and that seemed to take the wind out of their sails a little bit, Villa picking up 2 more in the last 20 minutes. All of that has left them in 9th position with 18 points from the 11 played so far. To the outside eye, the club appears to be well run, with them bringing in a number of players in on decent fees, despite Dean Court's 11,000 or so capacity. All of which means that Daisy has had to drag her mind away from dreaming of the rather splendid time we had out in Cape Verde and actually put in some research on their new signings this week. The first arrival was French left-back Adrien Truffert, whose fee could rise to £14 million once potential add-ons are factored in. Truffert has been capped at pretty much every level by the French, including 10 caps for the French Olympic squad. However, his appearances for the full side have been limited to just the one so far in the Nations League type thing, around 3 years ago, so he's not at the forefront for a place in next year's World Cup squad just yet. Goalkeeping options were boosted by the arrival of custodian Đorđe Petrovic from Chelsea for £25 million. As you might expect from Chelsea, he had in fact spent the previous season on loan at Strasbourg, who totally coincidentally and in no way dodgily are owned by the same company as owns Chelsea. Although Petrovic is the proud owner of 11 full caps for Serbia, he's currently viewed as second choice for the national side and was on the bench snoring with the rest of us through England's 2-0 World Cup qualifying win against Serbia the other week. It seems they like a French defender, Bafodé Diakité being the next of that ilk to arrive. The centre-back came in for a fee of £34.6 million from Lille. He too has been capped at pretty much all age levels plus the Olympic side, though he's yet to make the breakthrough to full honours as yet. One player we won't be seeing at the weekend is Ben Gannon-Doak, who arrived from Liverpool for a fee rising potentially to £25 million. Gannon-Doak provided the assist for McTominay's overhead kick in Scotland's 4-2 win over Denmark, which qualified them to be humiliated by Cape Verde next summer. However, shortly after that he pulled up lame with what appears to be quite a significant hamstring injury, so he's not available this weekend. Gannon-Doak is known for operating primarily on the right-hand side, unlike the next arrival, Armini Adli, who cost a shade over £25 million to bring in from Bayer Leverkusen. Another Frenchman by birth, the player elected to represent the Morocco of his forebears, having gained a number of age-level caps for the French. Adli was part of the Leverkusen side that went through the 2023-24 season unbeaten in the Bundesliga. The final new boy to arrive on a permanent deal was Serbian central defender Veljko Milosevic, something like that, who arrived from Red Star Belgrade for a not at all superstitious £13 million. At the age of 18, he's being treated as a work in progress, as evidenced by the fact he's made but 4 appearances for the first 11 since his arrival. They did dip into the loan market as well, picking up Spaniard Alex Jimenez on a season-long deal from Milan. The deal does contain an obligation to buy at the end of the season for an as-yet unspecified fee. Jimenez came through the ranks at Real Madrid before shifting over to Italy, and he's been known to play anywhere along the left-hand side, even though his early days in Madrid saw him start on the right. Well, after that, I think it's time for the wild and wacky world of association football, don't you? And one's attention was drawn to the recent draw for the Welsh League Cup semi-finals. Now, cup draws should be conducted with dignity and decorum. However, the Welsh League Cup organisers took one look at the word dignity and decided they'd have no truck with such notions. So what did they do? Well, of course they organised a go-kart race. Of course they did. This involved some ex-players, including, shamefully, Danny Gabidon. So, was it first past the post at home to 4th and second at home to 3rd? That'd be so daft. No, the race was there to determine which club would have which number ball, so they could then go ahead and make a proper draw. Not to be outdone, our own League Cup committee are looking at something similar for next season, where 3 ex-players on unicycles will race each other, plus Lando Norris in his McLaren, the latter being included to eliminate any possibility of Liverpool being drawn away. Of course, this week we've also got to the sharp end of World Cup qualifying. As previously mentioned, the world will be happy at the Scots qualification, as that's the comedy slot settled. Yes, we've had the Welsh to giggle at in recent years, but it's not the same, as they don't take themselves quite as seriously as our chums from north of the border. Curacao took full advantage of there being 3 host nations next year and qualified through the CONCACAF system, their 100,000 or so population being dwarfed by that of the mighty Cape Verde, who can call on about 500,000 souls in support. The Percy household will certainly be behind the Cabo Verdeans next summer, having first-hand experience of their marvellous hospitality and friendship. OK, let's move on to us. Well, last time out saw us turn over Burnley after several thousands marched to register their protest. Or, if you believe the Cubs' tame mouthpieces, 3 men and an arthritic Jack Russell terrier called Simon. During the match itself, after a fairly even start, Burnley took the lead, but that was pretty much it from the visitors. Wilson's poached effort was a striker's goal to equalise. Who'd have thought? Yes, the next 2 goals he scored owed much to Nick Pope having a game on which he would not look back fondly. However, whilst the execution of the goals themselves owed much to good fortune, nobody could argue that they weren't deserved. The only blip was the otherwise reliable Areola messing up at the last minute to give the final score a slightly misleading aura. But them's the breaks. Incidentally, the info panel in the matchday programme still listed Burnley manager as one Sean Dyche. Tut-tut, Mr Pritchard. There will be at least one enforced change this weekend. Paquetá picked up his 5th yellow of the season, which will give him an automatic week off. Potts picked up a thigh strain, which is not believed to be too serious, and he should be available for selection. Mavropanos and the possibly shortly to depart Fulkrug are likely to be unavailable. Given the possibility of a transfer for Fulkrug, it is quite possible that he may have played his last for us. Finally, Scholes is recovering well from his dislocated shoulder, and Fabianski should have recovered from a back problem should his services be required on the bench. And so on we move to the prediction. Well, good as their season has been, going into the break on the back of 2 defeats won't exactly have boosted their confidence, whilst ours would have had a kickstart from their last 2 games. However, add to that the fact that they're unbeaten at Dean Court, and this has all the hallmarks of a game from which we would do well to come away with a point. That is a scenario I can actually see happening. So, the £2.50 that I was going to spend on buying Daisy a moving in present, should we ever get the paperwork done to move into our soon-to-be new abode, Percy Towers has a ring to it, I think. This will instead be placed on a wager for a score draw. Mr. Winston, let's call it 2-2, shall we? Enjoy the game.